Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Cold Scott. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party, Chapter 19. Mairon's Unforgettable Day. The tra-la-la-la little lullaby should not sound like that. Even the 3 elven horses that the Sindar had brought, and now were following behind the group, seemed alarmed. Madros glanced at the brown-haired Sindar warrior beside him, the one called Moblung. Their eyes met. Madros saw genuine horror there, a nightmare of enemies wielding words enwrapped in song. It was a terrifying thought, he acknowledged. What good is a blade if a word of song could rip apart armies? Madros had a flashback to Rumil lecturing on the importance of speech. Do not forget, it was by the tongue the world was created. Words have the power of life and death. So, of course, Moblung had the right to be wary. Yet, when did Mossholder become so strong? At Mithrim, Madros knew that his brother had thrown himself into his craft. Whether to escape his pain, or to hurt himself further, he was never sure. Yet he remembered when he had first heard Mossholder's voice echoing from outside the healing tent. Its haunting melancholy had sent shivers through his broken body. Kelegorm, who had been at his bedside that night, had explained Mossholder's increased obsession with song, laughing and trying to lighten the mood by claiming that there was no longer any contest as to who was the greatest minstrel among the Noldor, at least where angst-ridden ballads were concerned. Yet becoming stronger than Findarata was one thing, silencing the earth was another. Madros would be lying to say he wasn't concerned. Did the Sindar do something to his brother while he had been unconscious? No, they appeared shocked. So where... At length, it was Luthien who dared to break the unnatural quiet. She laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. Daran, my friend, I do believe he sings better than you. Daran was chalk white. He stood alone with his mouth hanging open. It took a moment for Luthien's words to hit him, then he stood straighter. I wasn't aware we were singing songs of power. Very well then. No! Madros and Moblung shouted at once, the latter leaping forward to grab Daran's arm while Madros reached for his brother. The last thing they needed was to level Doriath via singing contest. Mossholder's blue-gray eyes were wild. I, he stammered. I don't know where. Something just came out of me. I didn't mean to hurt. Luthien's gentle hand was on his shoulder. Nonsense! You did not hurt anyone. Well, maybe Daran's ego, but I have faith it isn't mortally wounded. I used to have similar problem before my mother helped me teach me control. She stopped herself, realizing how her words might be taken the wrong way. Forgive me, I didn't mean to insult you or to claim that you never learned. I'm sure that if I nearly died, my mother's singing lessons would be far from my mind. Madros looked at her in wonder. Lady Luthien, you have no cause to apologize. His mother is no Maya. He looked hard at his brother, crouching with his hand on his knee as if to get a better look. Yes, he declared. Certainly he is Nerdanel's son. I was there when he was born. And Feanaros too. You can see it in his face, he explained, gesturing with his stump. Finally, the frozen fear on Mossholder's face dissipated, replaced by familiar grumpiness. He sweated Madros' arm away. Perhaps I'm just cursed. Luthien shook her head. No! It is no curse to be able to sing! I told you that I have the gift as well. Yes, but you're half Maya, Daran replied. So maybe Mossholder has been blessed, not cursed, Luthien explained. Just what we need. Blessed Feanorians, Moblung mumbled. Madros decided it was time to change the subject. He cleared his throat. Lady Luthien, perhaps your mother, if she is willing, can help my brother once we reach Menegroth. Regardless, there is little use standing here. Luthien's smile was as bright as the rays of Arya. Of course! We don't even have to sing. We can simply get to know each other. Madros did not miss Moblung's audible groan. He waited for Luthien, then fell into step beside her, looking around to see that the pines of the girdle had given way to dense beech trees. Moss covered their tall trunks, and the spring sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting all of them into rich, golden light. The hemlock along the path was just budding, and the birds began to chirp once more. The princess herself was just as beautiful as her realm. She could have been Varda's daughter with her alabaster skin and her hair as dark as a starless night. Galakorn would probably be in love immediately. Mothers would have to watch him if they ever met. Tell me about the lands outside Doriath. I want to hear all about them. I'm sure they're lovely, she asked him after a moment, her eyes bright with the thought of distant lands. Oh, how could the princess of Doriath be so naive? Midas thought. He was half tempted to tell her the full truth, but there was something so innocent, so kind about Luthien, something that reminded him of his home in Tirion, and of days long past that he could not bring himself to destroy with such pure hope. Himring is beautiful, especially in winter. There are days when the sun glistens on the snow and the banners fly proud and vibrant from the stone walls. Even on days of rain, when the world is muddy and grey, the fires inside will always be a warmth and comfort to the weary. He smiled, thinking of the stronghold he had grown to love, realizing that his words were not a lie. Of course, when the orcs come, the days are not so kind. Still, the enemy's forces break themselves on the walls. Never once have they broken through. Luthien's eyes were filled with awe. I would like to see it one day. Mairon smiled. Maybe you will, he replied, not daring to look at the other two Sindar. They would surely slay him for proposing such an idea. What about Doriath? Luthien giggled. Look around you. Doriath is not simply in the forest. It is the forest itself. As she was speaking, a swallow-tailed butterfly hovered around Mairon's head. He held his thumb up, and an insect alighted on his forehead, fanning its vibrant blue wings in the light. Mairon smiled despite himself. Perhaps Doriath isn't so bad. We don't need stone walls, Luthien continued. The enchantments and the wood protect us. Mablung sighed from somewhere behind them. And the March Wardens as well, especially Captain Mablung and Beleg, Luthien acknowledged. I am sure the two of you can exchange war stories. War stories? Mairon asked. He couldn't help himself. Of all his issues with Greycloak, it was not the Quenya ban or the constant stream of annoying letters that irritated him most. It was the lack of participation in the battles against Morgoth. Yes, Mablung grumbled. We fought while your people were drinking with the uncaring Valar, and we managed to do it without killing our... The look Luthien shot him was scathing. I mean our backs, he finished. Luthien nodded her approval at the clumsy replacement. You know that the men often hurt their backs, since they rarely know how to properly draw a bow, she explained to Mairon like Fëanor lecturing on the properties of certain gemstones. He laughed a little to himself at her seriousness, but otherwise didn't reply. As the trees thinned and they neared the rocky outcrops that marked the entrance to the City of Thousand Caves, Mairon looked behind him. Maklar was following several meters behind and looking like he was being led to his execution. He stopped and waited for his brother while the Sindar walked on. Do not look so grave. This is going better than expected, he whispered in his ear. Better? Maklar whispered back. I introduced myself by nearly flattening the forest with my voice. That was disturbing, yet I did not see a single tree fall. I think something happened when I was wounded. There is something stirring inside of me. The poison? Mairon asked. No, it feels like adrenaline, but in my fea. Interesting, and worthy of an actual discussion. Just not here. Mairon clasped his brother's shoulder. Then perhaps it is as the princess says. Perhaps you have been blessed. Maklar shook him off. Nelia, what is wrong with you today? I haven't seen you be so flippantly unconcerned since before the darkening. Don't you remember that Thingol despises us? The princess did help to save your life. She won't let her father slay you after all that effort. So we will live and be imprisoned forever in the realm of trees. Splendid, Maklar replied, kicking a twig that lay in the dirt trail. You could be chained to Tangordrim. Maklar gave him a dark look. I haven't contended with the trees yet, Mairon admitted, but even if they are as judgmental as you seem to think, something tells me they are the better choice. I'll take your snark and go back to the Sindar. Mother smiled. It had been a while since he had been called out for snark. The last time had been the infamous cliff incident in Valinor when Fingon, Finrod, and himself had nearly gone to Mondos. Apparently his explanation to their fathers had been a bit too sarcastic. Durioth must be enchanted indeed to drag this long-dead side of him back to the surface. In the skies above the white city of Gondolin, Mairon was having an unforgettable day. After capturing Feanor, who was supposed to be dead, he was positive that his fortunes could not get any better. Then the mountains had opened up to reveal the secret city of Gondolin. He had wondered if whatever whelp calling himself Noldoran would fall from the sky next. Yet, as he should have known, good fortune must be balanced with ill. So his soaring triumph was immediately undone by the horror of an eagle's talons wrapping tightly around his torso. It was like a mountain crushing his ribs. This would have been painful enough had the eagle not desperately tried to catch the falling Noldo. Mairon hadn't been able to hold on to the elf after taking the force of Grond to the back. No, instead of just being squeezed to pulp, he was also being wrenched like a toy in the jaws of Gargaroth. He thought of shapeshifting or singing, but both seemed doomed to failure. Mairon's racing thoughts were then interrupted by the eagle's sudden vertical dive. He was pulled downwards faster than Doom descending on the Noldor. Then he was jerked to a stop, and his lungs were nearly pulverized by the force. Mairon looked through tangled hair as they soared up once more to see that the eagle had succeeded in clutching the elf in his other talon. At least Feanor looked as sick as he felt. Mairon decided that fighting was useless. It stood too little chance of success. Whether brought to Manwë or taken to the coward Turgon, he was still more likely to win through deception. He let himself go limp in the eagle's claw, waiting to see just how this would play out.
Get up, you piece of mutton!
Ecthelion shouted, storming through Glorfindale's door. Because, of course, despite it being well into the afternoon, Glorfindale was snuggled beneath a mound of blankets, golden hair splayed across silken pillows.
I can't believe this,
he added, marching to the curtains. Although he would absolutely believe this, it was entirely typical Glorfindale behavior.
Go away,
a muffled voice from the bed ordered. No, Ecthelion replied, wrenching the curtains open without mercy, bright sunlight streaming into the room. Glorfindale yelped, and then his head disappeared entirely beneath the blankets.
Fine, Ecthelion declared. I will go greet the visitors myself. I thought the commander of armies would have wanted to make an appearance, yet I'm sure I can handle it.
That did the trick.
Visitors?
Glorfindale asked, shifting a bit so just his eyes appeared above the comforter. Yes, piece of mutton. Egalmoth's archer was speaking too fast, but I believe he said that the eagles brought 2 visitors and landed on the plain of Tumladen. Feanor laid on his back on the ground, the eagle's claws pinning him down. That was fine. He was still trying to breathe. Wow, he looks like Feanor from Penegard's books! A childish voice proclaimed in wondrous excitement. Feanor tilted his head back to see an elfling with wide brown eyes looking down at him. The 10-year-old looked about to poke him with a stick.
Lindir, remember your manners,
someone scolded, and Feanor, to his grave misfortune, recognized that voice.
Egalmoth, long time no see. How fare thee? He greeted.
Let not Yara and Rumil say he lacked courtesy. Egalmoth was wearing his signature blue mantle with crystalline stars embroidered into the fabric. His father had run the gemstone mine in Tirion, making his house nearly as wealthy as Finwë's own family. Although, perhaps, Feanor mused, admiring the rainbow of gems on the other's shield, his treasury was now the greater of the two. He certainly looked better. For one, an eagle wasn't testing the compressive strength of his ribcage, and for another, he wasn't dressed in whatever rags Ulm had found laying around in Ekkaya. They were probably from some shipwreck. Unfortunate.
Feanor?
The elf lord asked in shock, removing his helm with a glittering opal to get a better look at his former long-dead friend. Feanor smiled.
In the flesh? I see you found the mithril deposit. The Skarn-hosted one? Obviously you have, seeing your armor. It does make sense that you, of all people, would beat me to it. It's not our fault, really. If he hadn't gotten to Mondos on time, then I would have made the discovery. What's the average grade? I'm expecting it to be quite high. Oh, you know, Fenrir, it is 30%. A new voice answered, and Fenrir craned his head back further to see Glorfindel striding forward, the sun glittering off his hair and armor. See, Ecthelion, the elf nudged his friend with an elbow. I do listen to the Councillor Maeglin and Lord Egalmoth from time to time. I am worthy teammate for Itarila's trivia nights. You only knew that because at trivia night you guessed 0% and Rock nearly beat you with his warhammer, Ecthelion hissed in his friend's ear. We lost because of that. Fenrir saw Egalmoth's eye twitch the way Nerdanel's did when she was annoyed. He looked ready to find Rock's warhammer himself when someone else approached. What is going on here? Ah, that was Turukano. Turukano, whose wife had died on the ice. Not good. Fenrir turned to look at evil incarnate next to him, but Sauron was inspecting his nails. Aranya, Fenrir has returned from the dead, Egalmoth answered. What? Turgon asked. His blue eyes fell on the eagle and the two beings under its claws. On bewildered Lindir, smiling Glorfindel, and on Egalmoth, with one hand on his curved sword. Turgon, in that moment, did not look too well. His neck started to hurt. Fëanor attempted to twist onto his side so he could look at his nephew from a view that wasn't upside down. Don't hate me, nephew. I brought your father too. He's around here somewhere. It's not possible, Turgon replied. Your grandfather would say that seeing impossibilities is a symptom of a shallow mind. Are you really going to lecture him? A silky voice asked. And who are you? Turgon demanded, turning on Sauron. Clearly his legendary patience was already thinning. This is Sauron, Fëanor answered. I'd be obliged if you could lend me a sword so I might run him through. Glorfindel humped. It is Fëanor, all right. Complete with accent and obsessions with swords and violence. That thing tortured my son! And say he is Sauron of Angamando, Turgon began, trying to get a hold of the situation. What is he doing here? With you? He tried to capture me! Capture? Sauron? You should be the one called the deceiver for your lies. I am but a humble servant of Mondos, sent to take Fëanor back to the halls from which he escaped. You may call me Valan, Sauron spoke sweetly. Mondos? Valan? Oh, for the love of all that is holy! I've me eagle! I will punch this master of lies in the nose and send it back to Morigota in pieces! Steady! Ecthelion put up a hand when Fëanor started to struggle to wrench himself out of the massive claws. The great eagle squawked, but continued to hold him, looking up at the sky. The eagle must have known something, for the clouds darkened and an arc of lightning rent the air. I do like the wings, an airy voice commented, manifesting behind the group. All those gathered turned to see Eonwë behind them, dressed in brilliant white. Bird brain, Sauron ground out. Why are you here? Manwë sent me after Ulmo. Then he heard Ques's, he motioned to the eagle, silent prayer for help, and sent me. I was in the area. Ulmo has not been heeding the calls to council, but that is none of your concern. Fëanor could feel the static building in the air. He had the sudden realization that he did not want to be here in the middle of an argument between Mairon. Sauron smiled, white teeth gleaming. That short leash Manwë has on you is slipping. Really, you are the one they ought to call Gothar. If only you would let everyone see the real you. Another bolt of lightning ripped the sky. The grasses of the plains of Tumladen swayed as wind echoed through the encircling peaks of Ekoriath in an eerie howl. Fëanor noticed that everyone's hair was starting to stand up. Nope, not good. He redoubled his efforts to free himself when Lindir shouted, running for Egalmoth. Ecthelion reached for his sword when the thunder reverberated across the valley. Eonwë's eyes began to glow. Fëanor's instincts were screaming at him to escape when at once Sauron shed his fauna and attempted to flee as a spirit. Eonwë saw Sauron surrender his body, slip from Ques's grasp, and make it for the darkening clouds. Foolish coward! He spread his great white wings and leapt after him. Don't you remember that the sky is my domain? Lightning cracked from his sword as he threw it, and Eonwë sent great arcs of electricity straight after the fleeing coward. One found its purchase, striking straight into Sauron's back. The Umayyah screamed and began to fall. Eonwë used a breath of song to entangle Sauron's wounded Eala. Folding his wings, he drove it into the earth. So great was the force of the impact, the ground cratered beneath them, great volumes of rock launching into the air. Eonwë rolled and effortlessly leapt to his feet with the aid of his wings, the air around him saturated with dust from the shattered earth. He stood there within the crater, sword before him, waiting for his foe to rise. To his credit, Sauron did. Few other Maiar would have found the might to stand after taking such a hit without even a fauna to offer the basest of protection. Eonwë watched in silent respect as Sauron slowly got to his feet, his enemy spirit flickering as he clothed himself in a familiar form, complete with the distinctive golden red hair and the mark of an eye on his forehead. "Did you really think that would hurt me? Melkor has done far worse." "Then you are ill in mind to serve him." Sauron's golden eyes split the dusty stagnant air. The mark on his forehead appeared to glow. "No need to voice your thoughts, fool. I can see them just fine." Eonwë leapt. Mairon was no warrior. His strengths were in strategy and sorcery. It was Melkor and Gothmog who relished in fight. Still, he was not so easily defeated. He knew Eonwë's every move before he made it. Expertly, he stepped to first one side, then the other, always out of reach of the cutting steel. He put his arms behind his back and glided out of the reach of the sword. Then let loose a chilling laugh and stepped forward. "My fair herald, are we fighting?" he taunted. Eonwë scowled and whirled his sword over Mairon's head. He ducked and saw the lightning flicker on Harold's fingertips. No, he would not suffer that a second time. Mairon saw the dungeons of Angband flashing before his mind, where the blood of innocents ran into red lakes. Angband, his seat of power, which he had maintained all those centuries when even Melkor ate and drank in Valinor. Calling on his simmering hatred, he summoned hellfire to his hand and thrust it out, grabbing onto Eonwë's wing and burning it before the dreaded lightning could leave the other's hand. Now it was Eonwë's turn to scream, the horrible cry reverberating off the mountain walls. Although Mairon relished in it, Manwë's herald proved far more resistant than any thrall of Angband. Eonwë wrenched his wings back, and Mairon, still holding on, was thrown behind him. He landed on his back, in the dusty crater, ground still radiating heat from the force of the impact. Before he could stand, the herald was there, and they grappled in the dirt. Eonwë was stronger, but Mairon had the power grafted into him by Melkor. He reached forward with his mind, blazing himself into Eonwë's being. The herald shouted, and his hand found Mairon's throat. Mairon paid the hand no heed. He had bound Arian's brothers to cruel forms of the Valarauka. Was Birdbrain really that different? He attempted to drown him in the blackness of his malice, to form sticky ties locking Eala with Fana. Darkness began to dance before his vision from the lack of oxygen, but Mairon could feel Eonwë dimming. Just a little further. If I could trap him in this form, he would have enough strength to destroy it. He felt Eonwë's will begin to flicker. Mairon smiled, thinking if a great serpent would suffice to kill Manwë's pest. All too easy. Not that anyone else could have done it. White pain lanced through Mairon's shoulder, at once driving him from his thoughts. What? He reached up to touch an arrowhead jutting out of his body. Whirling, he saw an elf standing at the crest of the crater. His features were obscured by the dusty air, but his blue cloak and opal-crowned helm were unmistakable. Eonwë did not miss his opportunity. Spirit blazing like a white star, he threw Mairon back. An eagle cawed from somewhere high above them. Burning. Ripping. Something was tearing out of the branches of power Melkor had agonizingly planted into him. Mairon screamed. He shifted. Escape! Run! His mind yelled. Then the pain was gone. Only something was off. Something was terribly off. He looked up to see Eonwë before him, platinum hair a tangled mess, and right wing hanging in charred tatters. Mairon tried to reach for the herald's mind, only to find that he could not. Panic began to rise within him. He stood, and the world tilted. He attempted to call fire to his hand, but no heed came. He stumbled and fell. What did you do to me? He croaked, alarmed how broken his voice sounded. Only what you tried to do to me. I tied you to this favored form of yours. Mairon tried to summon his little remaining strength to mold a new fauna and found this one locked around him. Horror seeped into his veins. Horror and worse, because that was not all. What else? What else did you do? I took your precious power and bound it within you. No longer will you torment others with fire or enter their minds. You will live as simply as a man till you learn to repent, or else fade in your bitterness. Finarfin's head snapped up. He had been sitting around the fire at Tuelko's camp, making a journal of some of the new plants he encountered and tracing leaf imprints into the pages. Occasionally his thoughts would drift to his wife. She's all right, he tried to reassure himself. She had her father's trident, and she had saved him from primeval jellyfish. She could survive a few wolves and his elder brother. Suddenly, whatever had been dampening their marriage bond lifted. Erwen! He shouted at her mentally. Ara! Came the relieved answer. Ara, can you hear me now? Yes, my love. Are you all right? I am, but Naro... Is he on fire? No, well, I don't think so. Maybe. You don't know whether or not my brother is on fire. I mean, physically, of course. Well, we got separated. It was my fault, Ara. Your fault? My love, have you eaten any of the mushrooms? Nala has lectured me extensively. Apparently, they can be poisonous and some can make you delusional. No! Why? Ara, Finwë, you were about to try some, weren't you? I didn't know Beleriand had poisonous plants. Well, it does. But at least you didn't trust the fallen Maya. Poison plants seem rather innocuous in comparison. A fallen Maya? You mean a Valarauka? You face a Valarauka? Finarfin stood aghast. Here he was trying to figure out the plant life, and sweet Arwen was facing Balrogs. No! I would not have trusted a fire demon. Even I am not that gullible. No, he came to us in a fair form. He seemed rather nice. Then a wolf came to greet him, and it was the final piece of evidence not needed, so the Umaya took him and flew off. A wolf? Oh yes, it's very cute. I am keeping it. Findarata is a bit concerned, but... Findarata? Finarfin's heart leapt at the mention of his eldest son. But before Finarfin could question further, Huan stood and began wagging his tail, whacking Karantir, who was sitting playing dice with Anaire, Fingolfin, and Killekorn violently in the back. Ow! His nephew complained. What is it, boy? Killekorn asked, reaching up to pet the hound's head, when a wolf pup bounded out of the opposite forest, crossing the Narok in 3 strides. While streaming off its legs, the excitable pup ran straight to Huan and greeted the hound with playful barks. Killekorn had to dodge the wolf's whipping tail, standing to get out of the way. A wolf pup? Fingolfin asked, getting to his feet and eyeing it warily. The little pup was oblivious to the former king's wary stare. It jumped around happily before beginning to race circles around the campsite. Huan followed at a much slower pace, clearly more curious than concerned. Huan seems to like him, Killekorn noted, watching as the pup knocked a pot over in its excitement. I knew he would, came a familiar voice. I just haven't decided if that's a good thing. Finarfin's world stopped. He looked up across the river and saw Finrod sitting there on horseback, Eärwen behind him. His son was beaming. Finrod raised a hand above his head and waved. Adar! You have survived the Feanorians! And Nolo and Anoida too, I see! Do not worry, we have come to save you! He urged the white horse across the river, then leapt off, turned to help his mother dismount, and then both embraced Finarfin in a crushing hug. Finarfin melted into their embrace, relief flooding his heart. After several long moments, he reluctantly tore himself away. He took a good look at his son. He was glad to see the exuberance and childlike joy Finrod had been so known for lived on still in his vibrant blue eyes. Yet there was wisdom there too, a maturity that came only from centuries of leading their people who had crossed the ice. I hear you're a king now, he said. Finrod replied with a flick of his hand. Of Nargothrond, but Nolo and now Findegan are the real kings of the Noldor in Beleriand. Still, I couldn't be more proud. Please don't inflate his head anymore, Killekorn said. Already the men and dwarves adore him. You cannot make it 5 miles in this country without hearing someone sing praises of Finrod Felagund of Nargothrond.
Finrod smiled.
Telka, I see your hunt has been most successful. You even found Morio. Madros was worried about him.
I was doing perfectly alright on my own, Morio grumbled.
Finwë nodded.
Finrod, it is good to see you again.
My king! I see Mondos could not keep you for long.
My rest lasted about 5 seconds. Then Fëanor found me.
The two escaped, Anara explained. Worse, they were going to travel to Beleriand without me. A horrible idea. Truly, uncle, I thought better of you. I knew you were my favorite nephew. Anara winked at Finrod. He gave her the dazzling white smile that made all the maidens, elf, human, and even dwarf, fall for him. All would be disappointed, for Finrod's heart belonged only to Amaria. A golden dazzling one? I'll deny it. I thought we were kindred of the same heart.
Gilligan replied in mock offense. Another rolled her eyes at him. Finrod laughed. It was true. Another was the one most likely to go hunt with him. Nerdanel is here too. She just went to gather firewood, Fingolfin explained, still looking at the wolf pup, who had now calmed down and was now sniffing Gilligan's boots.
And I let her go alone?
Asked Finrod. She stands a better chance out there alone than you do. That was Garantir. He stood straight-faced, till a sparkle hidden in his eye gave his teasing away. Finrod glared at him.
That's it, Morio. You are officially uninvited to stay in Nargothrond. Even if you are right, which you probably are, you are still uninvited. Who's uninvited? A fair voice asked.
Everyone looked to see Nerdanel walking out of the forest to the riverside camp, arms full of wood for the fire.
No one,
Finrod quickly corrected.
Oh, Nerdanel, it's good to see you. Well met.
Nerdanel smiled.
Well met, Pindarato. I have missed you. I see you found your mother.
Erwin, dare I ask what became of my husband?
Well, he was captured by Sauron, but it was no one's fault, Finrod said, crossing his arms and giving his mom a warning look.
The wolf pup whimpered at the name of his former master.
It had come to sit on Gilligan's boots,
Huan sitting on the other side. The hound whined, and Gilligan cocked an ear.
Its name is Winian. He doesn't want to go back to the evil tower,
he translated, still able to decipher the language of the hounds from his days learning under Orm. We already decided we are keeping him, Yarvan told her husband, and Finrod knew better than to argue.
There was a reason the palace in Tirion had so many pampered cats, dogs, horses, and even a lizard who called it home. Nerdanel, I was able to reach Earwen through our marriage bond. Have you tried again with Naro?
Nerdanel frowned and set down the firewood. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, she looked ready to spit fire.
He's blocking me. Whatever was keeping us from communicating is gone. He's doing it now on purpose.
It could just be because he was captured, Finrod explained. He wouldn't want you to feel any pain. Nerdanel paled but nodded.
Still, it would be nice if he could at least tell me. I guess his pride is just far too great for that.
Garantir huffed. Gilligan looked away for a moment before changing the subject.
We should make for Nargothrond. All of us traveling together make for a very visible and tempting prize. The longer we are out here, the greater the probability of something spotting us.
Finrod attached a lead rope to his horse, apparently having seen that no one else still had one.
Didn't want in for a surprise, although I'm sure that he will be happy to see everyone, except maybe Winion. Oh, and maybe you, Dwelko. And you too, Morio. And he probably won't be too happy to see me myself, since I am not working on replying to the letters, but he's going to have to live with it.
Is Yara here? Finrod asked, remembering his father's old advisor.
Nah, he followed Maedhros. Dino has proven himself, however, though he makes me work more than is healthy.
Dinwe?
Dinwe, who used to be Miriel's scribe?
The one and only,
except he has grown less polite and more annoying over the years.
End of chapter 19. Stay tuned.